Ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is a moment that
Thank
I
you.
know you have all been waiting for. From a bedroom in Manchester, this university dropout built Social Chain, a company that would become one of the most influential social media marketing agencies in the world, all at the age of just 21. At 27, he took the company public to a valuation of $600 million. He's a speaker, he's a serial entrepreneur, and he's a content creator, but of course, he is the host of the most popular podcast in Europe, and I would say way beyond that, The Diary of a CEO. And he is also the author of the Sunday Times bestseller, Happy Sexy Millionaire. And last year, he made history as the youngest dragon to ever join the BBC's Dragon's Den. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Steven Bartlett.
Hello. Thank you for the introduction. Very kind.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Great to have you here in Sharjah, Steven. Okay, so let's get into it. You have built a number of multi-million-dollar businesses all before the age of 30. You're now 30. But I think it's really important to give people a bit of a context. So talk to us about how your experience growing up translates into who you are right here today.
Yeah, so I was born in Africa. I was born in Botswana, and I moved to the UK when I was a baby. My mother is Nigerian, my dad is English. Still to this day, my mother can't read or write, so she did a phenomenal job raising 4 kids in Plymouth, pretty much on her own. We moved to Plymouth in the southwest of England, where I was the only black kid, other than my siblings, that I knew. We were in a school of about 1,500 children, and we were the only black family. We were also the only family that didn't appear to have any money at all, so we were by far the poorest family. And this is all really important context because those early years, before you're 10 years old, end up shaping you in ways that end up playing out in your adult life, and that certainly was the case for me. And I always believe that the thing that invalidates us when we're young ends up being the thing that we seek most validation from when we're older. And for me, I wanted, more than any kid that I knew, to be enough. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to have the nice shoes, the nice house, and all of those things. Even in in my whole time and living in that area growing up, none of my friends knew where I lived. None of my friends in school knew where I lived. If I had a girlfriend, which really didn't happen, she also had no idea where I lived because our house was destroyed. And so off I went into the world with another real force behind me, which was a huge sense of independence. My mum started this corner shop, and she got so busy, preoccupied running that corner shop, that she stopped coming home. And so and also I'm the youngest of 4. That's the other important piece of context. Sometimes the youngest child gets treated like the older children, and I think my parents had thought that they had already parented us all. So the real force there was, because my mum was so absent, and because I wanted so many things, I learned a very important lesson at a young age, that anything that I'm going to have is going to be a direct consequence of my behavior. And that's where I think much of my entrepreneurship in hindsight comes from. It's from 14 years old, selling things and starting to do things because I was insecure, because I was full of shame, so that I could buy the stuff that my friends had. And if you start running those experiments at 14 years old, by the age of 18, 19, 20, you've built up so much evidence within yourself about what you can do, that you can have an idea and you can make it a reality, that I think that's much of the reason why I managed to build businesses and achieve so much at a young age. That really is the key to confidence. It's all evidence. It's all evidence you either do or don't have. And a lot of people in this room might think confidence is a choice you make. I don't think you choose any of your beliefs. One way that I can demonstrate that is if I said to you that, if I got someone you love in a headlock and I said I was going to pull the trigger unless you believe that I'm a spaghetti monster, everything's on the line, and you still can't believe I'm a spaghetti monster. everything. You can't make that decision. And the same applies for all your beliefs. Maybe you haven't chosen any of them. Maybe all of them are based on evidence that you either do or don't have. Sometimes the evidence is incorrect, but it's all based on evidence. And the reason why I think I was an entrepreneur is because at a very young age, I got a lot of evidence that when I have an idea, it's possible to make it happen. So, yeah.
I think it's so interesting that you say that you don't buy into that whole idea of just believe and it'll go fine. Because, at 18, you were kind of videoing yourself and going, well, this is for a documentary when I'm going to be rich and famous and you were living in near squalor at that time. So how did you get that unshakable belief then that was actually really going to happen?
I really had no reason. I had no evidence to tell me in my life that I couldn't do things. And I think about my academic performance in school. I got kicked out of school. I lasted one day in university before I dropped out of university. I can't do maths. I can't spell. If you look at any of the subjects I did in school, other than maybe business and psychology, I was a dreadful student. Even in business now, I was trying to add it up the other day. Social Chain's valuation got to about $700 million. My new company, Third Web, has just raised investment from Shopify and Coinbase, valued at about $200 million. My marketing group in the UK is worth maybe $50 million. All of those companies were built this year. It's about $1 billion in equity value that I've created in the last 10 years. I'm not good at finance. I'm not good at the business stuff. And it's funny because I sat with Richard Branson 2 weeks ago when he came on my podcast, and I found it really fascinating that Richard Branson didn't know the difference between net profit and gross profit until he was 50 years old, and someone pulled him out of a room and went, Richard, listen, okay. They drew a picture of an ocean, and then they put a net in the ocean and go, Richard, all the fish in the net, that's your net profit, and all the rest of the sea, that's your gross profit. He was 50 years old. He was a multi-billionaire, and he's also dyslexic. You can't show Richard Branson a presentation. He won't look at it. He'll only look at pictures. That's what he says. If you try and show him a presentation or words or numbers, just pictures. And I think that's really empowering because we tend to think that really successful business people are phenomenal operators and phenomenal at maths and phenomenal at processes and all these things and finance. No, it's nonsense. From my experience, the best entrepreneurs realize that they're very good at very little, that they become extraordinary delegators, and they triple down on the thing that they are uniquely good at. And for me, in my businesses, I'm good at very little, but I've spent so long focusing on that thing that I'm really good at that I don't think there's anyone better at it than me. And on the point of school, which I think was your question was about, the self-belief that I had when I was 18 years old. Yeah, what she's referring to is when I look back at my diary, when I dropped out of university, called my mum, said, Mum, I'm dropping out of university. She said, if you drop out of university, I'll never speak to you again. She was telling the truth. I moved to this really rough area where I was at the time, stealing food to feed myself. And I started recording a diary. And on the first page of the diary, I wrote that a TV production company had asked me to record this diary because they wanted to make a documentary about me. That's not true. I lied to my own diary, and I still to this day have no idea why. I have no idea why I lied in something that only I intended to see. And and I then started videotaping my despair. So I would open my fridge, and there'd be nothing in there, and I'd go, look, nothing. And then I'd go through my bailiff letters. Basically, a bailiff is other people that come and take your stuff when you have lots of debt. And I'd go through all of my debt letters, and I'd go, look, nothing. I'm really in a terrible situation. And I was videotaping it, and the reason I tell you that is because it's the clearest indication of my perspective. That moment of my life was a stepping stone. It wasn't my destination. There was 0% of me that thought that was my destination. This was just this really exciting story that I was going to tell one day. And it's crazy because the reason why I said I wasn't good in school and I didn't have great academic performance is to highlight the one thing that I clearly did have, which was I just had a ton of self-belief. And I remember saying back then, even when I was 18, 19, 20, if you told me to go to the moon next week, my orientation is there is a way to make that happen. That was always my bias. They actually call it an optimism bias. I was always optimistic. I always thought there was a way to make the things that I envisaged happen. And again, that goes back to the point I made about evidence. From a very young age, I built that evidence about myself, and it's self-fulfilling. It's also self-fulfilling the other way. This week, I actually sat with an expert on optimism on my podcast. And it's interesting because 14, I try and do things, and I do it with an optimistic attitude, and they go well, which reinforces that I can do things. So I try and do more things, but because I'm optimistic and I have the evidence that the previous experiments have gone well, I do them, I show up better, I show up more positively, and it's self-fulfilling. We've seen how optimism, even in studies, is self-fulfilling. The same applies the other way down. You can spiral down in a pessimism cycle, where you try something, you try it half-heartedly because you're lacking in confidence, it doesn't go well, it knocks your confidence, and then you try less things, but even the things you try them in a more fearful way, so they go worse, and your confidence can spiral down.
Everyone wants to change something.
Yeah.
As we speak, everybody's writing their New Year's resolutions for 2023.
Yeah.
So, you speak about how you have to think. What are the steps that you need to take to make it happen?
Give me an example of something you want to change.
Somebody who wants to make a business happen this coming year.
I guess, regardless of what you want to change, whether it's your relationship or whether it's a resolution you have, or you want to finally get in the gym, or you want to finally start the business, the reason why you'll either succeed or fail typically is because of, as Simon Sinek says, who's now a good friend of mine, is because of your why, the reason why you want to do it. I'll give you an example about one of the things I wrote when I was 18 in my list of things I wanted to do before I was 25, and much of the reason why my book is called Happy, Sexy Millionaire, is at 18 years old, I wrote in my diary, I want to make £1 million, I want a Range Rover Sport to be my first car. Bear in mind, I was stealing food when I wrote this, and I didn't have a driving license. I want to have a six-pack, and I want to get a girlfriend. Now, the reason I failed on the six-pack point, and didn't manage to get the six-pack before 25, debatable, a 4, is also the answer to this question. My goal every year, and one of my friends, Logan's here somewhere, so he'll know, because there he is. My goal every year was to get fit for summer, right? So I come into January, I'm working out more than you've ever seen anybody work out. I'm eating like a rabbit, okay? And I do that for 6 months. But then one of two things happens. Either summer comes around and ends, or I get fit. Both of them remove my why. So as I got into October every year, I couldn't understand why any human being would ever go to a gym or eat healthy food, because my why had vanished. I had a why that could be unanchored. It was a very superficial, unanchorable why. So the thing that's changed in my life over the last 3 years is my why can never be completed, and it's for real intrinsic reasons. My why now is centered on health and being healthy, and my goal is consistency. So for the last 3 years, I've managed to be consistent in the gym. I go to the gym about 90% of days in a year, and it's the same for all my goals. If you have uncompletable, intrinsically motivated goals, then you'll be successful. If your goals are for other people, for superficial reasons, they are completable, then I'll probably bet against you. And it's just a reframing of my goals. It's the same thing in my personal life. One of my personal goals now is balance. And I get a shot at it every day that I wake up. And balance for me means spending as much time on my businesses as I do with my girlfriend and my dog and my family. And so I think that's this is why most New Year's resolutions fail, because they're not conceived with intrinsically motivating fundamentals. Then there's loads of little tricks and tips that I can give you as it relates to goal setting and goal completion. One of them is to make some kind of pact. And this works for some people. You can have a financial pact, you can have a social pact, but even those things, I sat with an expert on distraction, procrastination, and goal setting, and even those things are a little bit loose. If you're doing it for yourself for the right reasons, I think it will stick and it will last. And that's the most important thing for me. Here's another point. The reason most of your goals won't be that, they won't be driven by you and what you want in your life, is because you're insecure. And because you don't realize that you are enough. Because when I didn't deeply believe that I was enough, I wanted a Lamborghini, a mansion, a six-pack, and loads of cash. When I realized that none of those things were going to increase the value of Steven Bartlett, and that one Steven Bartlett was always going to be worth one Steven Bartlett, I could aim at other things. I started writing books. I started a podcast. I started DJing. I started seeing my girlfriend more and becoming a better boyfriend in my family. And that's the difference between fake ambition, which is driven by shame and insecurity, and your need for admiration from external validation, and then real ambition. When you know you're enough, you have real ambitions. When you don't, your ambitions will look like mine used to, and you'll want to be a happy, sexy millionaire.
I think this is kind of related as well. You're an exceptionally good quitter.
Yes.
It's so interesting because, you talk a lot in the book about the number of times that you've quit on something. There's even an example of, there was like a fundraising meeting for like $40 million.
Yeah.
At the last minute, you go to the team, I'm not coming. They're like, but you have to come.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm not doing this. And you didn't go. Some people would be like, oh, that's really great. He's so intuitive and in tune with what he wants and needs. And other people might go, well, that's really flaky. How can I trust him with my time, my money, my investments?
Well, we glamorize starting, don't we? We clap for everybody when they start something new, when they start that new business, when they start that whatever. But with it in mind that time is finite, that there's 24 hours in a day, you can look at them as chips, as I do in the book. You wake up, you've got 16 chips left, you just spent 8 chips sleeping. Then, in order to start something new, you have to make the decision to quit something else or to not do something else. So if we glamorize starting, we need to also realize that quitting equally is a skill. And the example in my book is actually when I quit Social Chain. I was the CEO. We had a big fundraising meeting happening where we were raising about $40 million. I lead that, so I'm the person that goes out and speaks to the banks. And I realized I wanted to quit. My time at the company was done. And in hindsight, I look back over my life and I see these key moments where I've quit school, university. I started a company called Wallpark. I quit that and started Social Chain. I then quit Social Chain, and here I am now. And I found it puzzling that I was a very, very peaceful quitter. I didn't have stress. I didn't feel anxious. I had full faith in the future. And I realized that quitting really is a skill. And the most successful people I've met in my life, that you'll all know because they are at the top of their industries, are the best quitters. You will be defined by your relationship with uncertainty. And most people, whether it's a relationship or a job or whatever else, will stay in a certain miserable situation because they are uncomfortable with the uncertainty they'll encounter as they go in search of more. And so I made this quitting framework, which is in my book, and I'm going to run you through the quitting framework. This applies for anything in your life, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, no matter what it is. Okay, and some of the words are purposefully vague, so you can make them fit for you. At the top of the quitting framework, we have the question, are you thinking about quitting? Yes. 2 reasons. Because it's hard, right? Hard, is, in my definition, is you're running a marathon and it hurts and it's hard, or because it sucks. For me, that's got more mental connotations. It's just really an unpleasant sort of toxic experience. You're thinking of quitting because it's hard. First question becomes, is the hardship worth the rewards on offer? So you're running a marathon and you're on marathon mile 23. Is it worth it? Because if something's hard and it's worth it, don't quit. If it's hard and for you it's not worth the hardship, then you should quit. There's nothing worse than doing something that is not meaningful and is difficult. Go back up. You're thinking of quitting because it sucks. First question becomes, do you believe you could make it not suck? It could be a relationship, could be a marriage, could be a job. Go to therapy, go and see the board of directors, have a conversation with your boss. Do you believe you could make it not suck? If the answer is no, quit. If the answer is yes, the next question becomes, is the effort it would take to make it not suck worth the rewards on offer? So you might have to go to marriage counseling with your partner, but is it worth it for the relationship that's going to be on the other side of it? For me, it was a case of going to my board of directors and telling them all the things I wasn't happy with. Is the effort it would take to make it not suck worth the rewards on offer? So you believe you could make it not suck. If you believe the effort it would take is worth it, don't quit. Do the work. If you could believe you could make it not suck, but it's not worth the effort it would take, the rewards on offer aren't worth the effort it would take, then you quit. And that's the position I found myself in. I believed I could make it not suck, but at the point I was at in my life, I'd been diluted right down as a founder. I'd already lost control of the company from a legal perspective. I thought to myself, you know, at this phase of my life, I'm 27 years old, I might as well go and go again. And I learned something really important from Barack Obama. We both spoke on stage in Brazil, and Obama said, you know, one of the most important things in life is being able to get to 51% certainty on your decisions, then making your decisions with peace, that you made your decision with all the information available at the time. He talked about when he flew those 2 helicopters over to Pakistan to get Osama bin Laden. He didn't know if Osama was there. He was risking American lives. He didn't tell Pakistan, but the intel they had was that Osama was there. So he made the decision with peace. And we all know in our lives and in business, 100% certainty only exists in hindsight. Only exists in hindsight. The best, from running a marketing business for about 10 years and sitting with the biggest CEOs, CMOs in the world in their boardroom, I got to learn firsthand the risk isn't your experiment or your decision failing. The risk ends up being the 9 months you spend taking the decision. I saw this firsthand. The example I'll give is I worked with a family business. It's $1 billion family business. The dad runs one part of the business, the son runs the other. If we took an idea to the dad's business, it would take 9 months to either get the answer yes or no for a marketing idea. If we took it to the son's business, the son would say, he would call the team in, no contracts, he'd say, we're going to do this today, we're going to try it now. Now, success or failure, he saves 9 months and he's on to the next experiment. In the dad's case, if the dad says yes, he's lost 9 months to find out that it didn't work. The cost, as I observed it for those 5 years working with the dad and the son, was clearly the time spent making the decision. It was indecision, it was procrastination, not the experiment itself failing. The son's business overtook the dad's business and became the biggest business in its sector, and I know why. 13 million of their 15 million Instagram followers came from one of those experiments that I took the son, that the dad's company spent 9 months deciding about. Then eventually, by the time they said yes, the change on Instagram had gone. The little loophole we'd found about, I can't say the secret, but the little loophole we'd found no longer worked. And that's it. It's being able to make your decisions in your life at 51% certainty, plowing ahead, and increasing the failure rate of both your organization and your life and yourself, which is difficult for people that have an uncomfortable relationship with uncertainty.
I love that. Increase the failure rate. I love it. Diary of a CEO. We have to talk about this incredible podcast. How many people here are a fan of, yeah, I knew it. I think you made 1.2 million from the podcast last year. Is that right? Something like that?
5 or 6, I can't remember.
Okay.
I don't know.
So that was an underestimation there. But talk to us about why you started the podcast and why you think it is one of the most listened to today.
So I'll give 2 reasons. I'll give the reason number 1 why I think it resonates with people is because there is a huge demand for honesty, openness, vulnerability. It resonates with you more than anything else. Everybody knows that. If you want to create connection with another human being, you open up. You don't brag. You don't show off. You don't tell them how perfect your life is. We can't resonate with that. We can't connect with that. The bridge to human connection is vulnerability. And I think the Diary of a CEO really leans into vulnerability. There's a huge demand for that, but there's little supply of vulnerability. People telling you, the less glamorous parts of their life and their story. And then I'd say the second thing is more about what we've done behind the scenes, so things you'll never see, which is kind of goes back to what I just said about the failure rate. Our team fail more than any team that I know, and we care more than any team that I know. We care about this tiniest little things that if I told you about, you would think we were crazy. The temperature of the room when the guest arrives, the music that's playing when the guest arrives, We A/B test every thumbnail. So if you look at a podcast episode on YouTube when it comes out, you look at it an hour later, it'll look completely different because it's being A/B tested in real time. I know if you ask me any stat about the podcast, I know it as I'm sat here because I checked an hour ago. And our whole team are orientated the same way. The most commonly said phrase in our office is the phrase 1%, because it's our religion as a team. And this is also why Social Chain was successful. It's why I believe any company that I'm involved in will be successful, because I think we'll outcare our competition and we'll also outfail our competition. We'll conduct more experiments on more things than any other podcast will, which most people don't care about, because the small stuff, the stuff that's easy to do, also happens to be easy not to do. Saving £1 of your money or $1 of your money is easy to do, so it's also easy not to do. Brushing your teeth is easy to do, so it's also easy not to do. But it's those small things that are invisibly compounding for or against you in every area of your life. Your skin, your hair, your friendships, your teeth. Don't brush your teeth today, you'll be fine. Don't brush your teeth every day this week, you'll be fine. But don't do that for 5 years and you're sat in a dental chair as the dentist pulls the teeth out of your mouth. When did it happen? It happened today. And then it happened tomorrow, but you couldn't see it. And so our team are obsessed with the tiny little things. And it's funny because, I said my objective as an entrepreneur is just to increase the failure rate of my team. Why is that? Well, one of the reasons is because all of the answers you're looking for in every facet of your life, your relationships, your marriage, your marketing strategy, your product strategy, all of it, your hiring strategy, no one has ever had the challenge in we're in December now. December the 18th? Yeah? December the 18th, 2022. No one has ever had the challenge of solving the problems that you're trying to face for your business ever. No one has ever tried to figure out marketing for your business on December 18th, 2022. There's no book written about it. And with the current rate of change in the world, most of the old strategies don't work anymore. So is it conceivable that you're going to arrive at the right answer by trial and error, by trying stuff? If you read a book or you look at an article that tells you how to build a personal brand or how to grow on LinkedIn or Instagram, all of it's redundant now. So the teams that are going to arrive at the correct answer the fastest are the teams that are failing the fastest and conducting the most experiments. So my job in all of my companies is to design a culture and a mindset within our people where they are failing faster than all of their competition. And if I do that, then it's just a matter of time. And that was the case for the podcast. 18 months ago, we predicted that we'd be the #1 podcast in Europe, and we weren't even in the top 200. We couldn't see where we were. We were doing 10,000 downloads a month. This month, we'll do about 20 million. But we could see it because we cared about the 1%. And what the 1% does is it changes the trajectory of your line. And we could see every day, we're looking at Social Blade, every day we can see that line is moving. I mean, I can tell you one experiment we did where we changed something by 15 seconds and it increased our subscription rate by 300%. I'm going to tell you. But just keep it to yourselves, okay? Because then if you all start doing it, it's not going to work for me. And I wouldn't want that for me. So just nobody copy.
We won't tell anyone. Sorry. It's all good.
We've run out of time. Sorry. Basically, this also goes to another point, which is about just a broader point about marketing generally. If something sounds like you've heard it before, the brain is phenomenal at adapting to filter it out. Have you ever heard, by a show of hands, anybody say on YouTube, like and subscribe?
Yep.
You've all heard it before. It doesn't work. It's wallpaper. That's the term me and my team use. We say that's wallpaper, which means that nobody will notice it anymore because it's been overdone. So most YouTube videos, they say, hey, like and subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Nobody does it. We just carry on watching, right? So we changed that and used a little bit of psychology to try and create a new call to action, which was based in psychology and the principles of how to influence people. A lot of you might have seen this on YouTube. The new call to action says, 74% of you that watch this YouTube channel don't subscribe. The first thing, because it's a very specific number, your brain pays attention. 74, right? 74% of you that watch this YouTube channel don't subscribe. My new one's actually 69% because that's a little bit, So 69% of you that watch this YouTube channel don't subscribe. If you've ever enjoyed this channel, this is a call for reciprocity, which means if I've ever done you a favor, and when people are asked to reciprocate, they do, in influence. If you've ever enjoyed this channel, could you do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button? It helps this channel more than you know. And the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests get. Our subscription rate went up 350%, which means if I'd done that at the start, I would have about 4 million subscribers versus the 800,000 I think we have now, 833,000.
And before I ask you the next question, one of the things I noticed as well is that you post consistently. You don't do seasons anymore. You're doing it weekly, and that also transformed the numbers on your podcast as well.
Yeah, so whenever you're playing a game that compounds, they say the number one rule of compounding interest is you don't interrupt the process. And it couldn't be more true for podcasting. If you take a week off, you fall out of, you'll think about where you listen to the podcast. I'm somewhere in your routine.
Yeah.
Right? You're nodding, right? I'm somewhere in your routine. I'm in the gym with you. I'm on the dog walk. I'm on the commute. I'm on the plane. I'm somewhere in your routine. And if I'm not there, I fall out of your routine. And I've seen that in the numbers when we used to do seasons or whatever. So as is the case with anything that compounds, number one rule is you don't interrupt the process, which for us means no days off.
Who are, I mean, you've mentioned Sir Richard Branson, amazing episode, I love that, but who are some of the guests who really surprised you?
Mo Gaudat?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who was here yesterday? Who saw Mo
He was here yesterday.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Is he still your favorite?
I think so. Yeah, he's my favorite person as well. He, Apple released the numbers actually this month. Apple, and you can actually go see it if you go onto Apple Podcasts. And that episode is episode 101 with Mo Gaudat is the most shared episode of every podcast episode in the whole of 2022, which is staggering because he wasn't a celebrity, so.
But what did you take away from that particular podcast that has stayed with you?
So much about how to handle decisions, how to handle your emotions. One of the key things which was very illuminating for me was this idea of expectation management. He said a phrase which has stuck with me, which is, people are happy when their expectations of how life is supposed to be going are met. And therefore, one would deduce people are unhappy when your expectations of how your life is supposed to be going go unmet. If you think about that, I'm from Botswana, that's where I was born, and a hot bowl of rice in Botswana, I've seen euphoria, happiness in people's faces when they get that hot bowl of rice. If I go to Mayfair in London and a billionaire's steak doesn't come the right medium rare that they requested, I've seen visceral anger. What's the difference? Someone's expectations of how life is supposed to be going are going met and unmet. And you think about this in all facets of your work, in your relationship with your partner, when your expectations of them aren't being met. You know, when someone cuts you up in traffic, some people genuinely would just be amazed they're in a car. Whereas some others, when they get cut off in traffic or the light turns red, visceral anger. I saw it in myself. I didn't get on a plane, other than coming from Africa. My first holiday was when I was 21 years old. And I got on economy. Me and my friend were going to Thailand together. I got on and I'm in the economy section, and I'm just blown away. We're in a tin can, and we're going to try and fly over the ocean. I couldn't believe it. I'm blown away. I'm looking at the safety manual like, ah! 5 years later, I'm traveling 50 weeks a year, and I'm flying first in business class. And I'm just rushing on the plane, throwing my bag up, and trying to pull my laptop out as fast as I can so I can finish my work before I lose internet connection. And one day, I look over to my left, and I see this woman. And she's in business class as well. And she's got the champagne, and she's nudging her husband. She's going, "There's champagne!" And she's putting on the slippers and the coat, and she's looking through the catalogue, and she's nudging. She's, Dave, look, there's TV. That's the joy that I used to experience. When did it change? When did I lose that? I'm in the same objective situation. We're having two entirely different psychological experiences. The only thing that changed was my expectations. And with it, along went my happiness. And so if you're aware of that, you can really do some work to be grateful for these things that you have in your life, and so that you can enjoy them a lot more.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all about gratitude. Um, but to the idea behind the podcast, I'm a great believer that we grow and we actually become more complete as human beings when we listen to, when we engage with the stories of others, especially people that are different to us, which is, I think, one of the reasons why the podcast is so incredible. But so I want to ask you about the power of storytelling. What is the most powerful aspect of storytelling that you think not enough people are tapping into, whether it be in business, whether it be in their relationships, all of these different areas?
It's really simple. In fact, I sat this week with a neuroscientist who's also a psychologist who's written a lot about storytelling. The answer is very, very simple. It is emotion. And I'm gonna tell you something. So I built Social Chain, which was a B2B marketing agency for 7 years, and we became the biggest. Our clients were Amazon, Coca-Cola, Apple, you name it, they worked with our company. We didn't have a sales team. When I left, when I resigned, we didn't do sales. We didn't do outbound sales. I told you a second ago I was flying 50 weeks a year. I was flying 50 weeks a year to tell stories on stage. And every story that I told on stage started with the story of my mother. I wouldn't come out and tell you facts and figures, they don't work. Graphs, stats, numbers, they do not work. I walked on stage in every corner of the world that you can imagine for 50 weeks a year, multiple times a week, and I walked out and I didn't even say my name. I'd walk on stage and go, this is exactly why you got expelled from school. You are incapable at sticking at things you do not believe in. Do not call me and do not call any of the family until you go back to university. And with that, my mum hung up the phone. Look, I'm selling a marketing business here. That's what I was doing. I was selling a marketing business, and the way that I did it is I told really emotional stories. When I said that, the room goes quiet. You're all thinking, what the hell is going on? But I've got your attention. It's not wallpaper. And this is the power of emotion in storytelling that people just don't understand. No matter how many times I tell people this, they will still bring their stats, their graphs, and their facts, and their figures. And I have to say it, as much as people don't like it, there was this really great moment in the 2016 primary election, which the neuroscientist told me about this week, where Donald Trump was on stage competing for the presidency with a doctor called, I think, Dr. Carlson, right? And one of the questions is about the vaccines giving, this was before COVID, this was about the child vaccines giving autism. Now, the doctor says, no, those vaccines don't give you autism, and starts talking about the stats, facts, and figures. Donald Trump tells a personal anecdote of one of his friends that he knows, kids getting the vaccine and then getting autism. The neuroscientist is a doctor, is sat at home watching it, and she goes, even though I know the stats and the facts and the figures, even though I know those vaccines don't give kids autism, for a week after I heard Donald Trump say that, even I was scared to give my child the vaccine. Facts, stats, and figures, all you like, they don't work. They don't connect with humans. Humans are orientated to care about fear, emotion, threat, and all of those things. So we wake up and our brain comes alive when we're told emotional stories. They've seen this under MRI scans and brain scans. So that's the most important thing. If you want to sell something, if you want to sell yourself, if you want to sell your business, whatever it might be, stop with the facts, stats, and figures and graphs and charts. And figure out what the most amazing, compelling story you can tell is that will twist and turn and inadvertently deliver the message that you're trying to land. That is the most important thing.
I love it. Dragon's Den.
Yeah.
Lots of founders here. Yeah. Lots of founders here. It's all super entertaining watching Dragon's Den, Shark's Tank, all of that. The pitches are out there. But how do you know that a business is going to succeed long-term beyond the winning pitch?
You don't really, to be fair, if I'm honest. There's no way to, it's like hiring people, it's still guessing. The thing that I look for and care about the most, the thing that I think I have the most information on, isn't the business and the industry that it's competing in, it's the character of the entrepreneur. I think if you can understand the character of a person, you can predict their future behavior in certain situations. If they're humble, they will adapt. But I also know what happens in the life cycle of a business. I know that in every person's business, regardless of how smart you are, regardless of how much money you have, or even how experienced you are, there's going to be impossibly difficult days. Days that are just the worst, where anyone with a brain cell should and would quit. Just excruciatingly painful moments where you realize that you were wrong and there's a potentially fatal cost of you being wrong. I know that's going to happen. So when I'm trying to think about my investing strategy, I'm trying to invest in people that I know can survive that moment. How much humility do they need to have that when all the data says your hypothesis was wrong and you're going to have to go tell your mum, your dad, and your dog that you were wrong, do they adapt? Or are they romantic and stubborn about their hypothesis and go off the end of the runway and fail because they were too egotistical? Are they going to be resilient enough in that moment to not fold? In business, there tends to be you get one of three types of people. If this room is on fire now, you have one type of person who will be frozen with fear. They're going to die. You have another type of person, the panicker, who is just going to scream at all of us that the room is on fire. Also not helpful. Also going to increase the probability that we're going to die. But we're not just going to die, we're going to die stressed. And then there's a third type of person, well aware that the room is on fire, realizes that we all know the room is on fire, and they dictate all of their energy to figuring out how we get out of this room. That's a leader. Those are the people you want to invest in, because the room is going to be on fire one day, and the person that you're giving your money to needs to be the one that's orientated to getting out of the room. Level-headed, composure, focusing on that which that they can control. And so, I think about character when I'm investing.
Barbara Corcoran said something really similar. Shark Tank legend. She said something very similar on your podcast. She actually calls up the ones that she's invested in a few months later and sees what's happened and sees exactly what's their reaction, because things are going to go south. And what do you do in that moment? So, this is really interesting because we glorify the hustle that goes along with building a business. And to be really successful, you have to put so much into it, and you have to completely believe in it. And one episode that stands out for me on your podcast is one with Whitney Wolfe Herd, where she was, the youngest female billionaire founder. And she was talking about how it's almost cult-like, the way that you need to really believe in what you're doing. And you agreed with her, and you said, how do you go into business, go all in without losing yourself in it as well at the same time? Because we all know that it's tough. Mental health issues are big for entrepreneurs. How do you do it?
I mean, there's a few things. So this is part of the reason why I started the Diary of a CEO. If you just think about the name of the podcast, it was to try and give you a look into the diary, the journal of a CEO, so you can see the other side of the coin, the non-glorified, the non-Instagrammable side of the coin. And in my head somewhere, having built a business that was incredibly painful, I wanted more founders to see how painful it was. And that's why I started the podcast. And in doing so, you can make a more informed decision as to if you start that business or not. But more so, it'll make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Because if I tell you something's going to be excruciatingly painful, it goes back to my quitting framework. It better be worth it for you, and really subjectively worth it, not money or anything else. We all know that's not guaranteed in business. It better be a real mission and a real crusade you're on, and that was certainly the case for Whitney. She was on a crusade. It was the same for the founder of Whoop, who was on my podcast as well. It didn't matter success or failure. These people needed to see change in the world, and so on that excruciatingly difficult day when most people would quit, they had no choice but to continue, because they were so obsessed with seeing a change in the world. And I think that's the key thing. It's just, and it goes back to what I said about making sure you're doing it for the right reasons. And how do you not lose yourself in the process? I think this probably comes back to a point of balance and making sure that, I've seen this in a lot of my friends. I've seen it in myself as well. I gave so much to my business. I sacrificed my friendship groups. I eventually, a couple years in, I'm just going to the office every day of the week, including Saturday and Sunday. I didn't know it at the time, but in hindsight, that feeling in my chest was definitely loneliness. I was, it got into the point that I was going to the office on Saturday and Sunday, sometimes with Logan over there, and he was going to his office, and I didn't even have work to do, but I certainly didn't have friends to see by this point because I'd sacrificed everything. And then my business partner starts drinking at 3, 4 a.m. in the morning in our house with the lights off downstairs. I don't quite know what that is. I just think he's having too much fun. Turns out he was an alcoholic and the stress of the business had gotten to him. We weren't talking, so I had no idea. I've got other friends that had really severe panic attacks in the same phase. I think it's a lot of those things. Communicating, keeping your community really, really close to you. Investing in your relationships as much as you do your business. And then the other thing I have to say is your health. We sometimes sacrifice our health in the pursuit of material success, but if the pandemic has taught me anything, it's that our health is our first foundation. And I posted a video about this on Instagram the other day where I had a realization about 3 years ago, which was the big catalyst for me to move from wanting a six-pack to caring about being consistent, where I realized because I saw the pandemic and I saw how fragile life was, and that when you lose your life, you lose everything, that my health, like this table, is the thing that everything else sits on. Every company I own, my dog, Pablo, my family, all of my relationships and all of my dreams, all of it is contingent on this thing, which is my health. You take away my dog, God forbid, I still have everything else. You take away my businesses, I still have everything else. You take away my health, I lose everything. And also, as we've all seen from running businesses, there's a direct correlation between how much you sleep, what you eat, how much water you drink, and your performance. Sleep for me is number one. The variance of my performance, my creativity, my delivery, my mood, if my sleep drops and my REM sleep and my deep sleep drops, is insanity. Insanity. I would say it's more than 100% less productive, more than 100% less creative. So, but the hustle porn culture doesn't talk about that enough. So, yeah. Sleep now is non-negotiable for me. I don't set an alarm. Nothing before 11. Water, working out every day, all of it's non-negotiable.
Sounds luxurious. Nothing before 11, just in case you need an appointment with Steven. Let's talk leadership. You've said, I'm not here to be liked. First and foremost, I'm here to produce high-quality work and a high degree of integrity, work that can be proud of. Everything else is a secondary bonus. What do you like as a leader, and is there a lot of friction between you and those that you work with?
Well, in my current team, nobody's ever quit, which is good. We reward people exceptionally well. We just did a big bonus the other day, and there's 23-year-olds in my team that were handed checks for 20, 30, 40,000 pounds this week. The Diary CEO team got big payouts, all of them, tens and tens of thousands of pounds each. They're 20-year-olds because it's done well. So I'm really proud of the profit sharing thing. What am I like as a leader? I have a very high standard, and I want all of my managers and all of my leaders to have a really, really high standard. It goes back to what I said about out-caring our competition. We just really have to care. I think I'm really empathetic to people, so I will go above and beyond to try and help people in their individual circumstances. I think sometimes I need to be completely honest. Sometimes I still have a battle of maintaining a high standard while also being very time poor. And this means that communication can sometimes fall by the wayside. And so one of the things I said to my team last week is that I'm going to communicate now by memos versus just typing things out in chats, which means I'll write a page and then I'll send it to the team. High standards, that's the main thing. It'd be interesting to ask my manager, where is he? Are you here?
Where's John?
What he'd say. Probably hiding.
We have to ask him. We have to get up on the stage and ask him what you like as a leader.
High standards, high working, hard working, lots of fun. I think that's really important. I think it's really, really important to get the balance right. So Whether it's taking our teams to New York, we're going skiing in a month, and we all go to LA as the whole team together. There's about 30 of us, just my personal team, making sure everybody comes with us, paying for everything, because then I expect really high standards, so I feel like it's got to go both ways. Very flexible working environment. There's no holiday allowances. There's no checking when people are in and when they're not in. Very, very high trust environment. I think that's critical. Yeah.
I like it because, it all balances out in the end. What is the one thing that you know that you need to address, but you're still struggling with?
Oh, so many things. I think one of the most important things throughout my whole life is communication. Because I have this huge time pressure, which is I basically have no time. At any given moment, I have no time. I'm always late for something. I'm running multiple businesses all around the world. I've told you about some of them, but there's many more, and there's many more things going on. I have 2 books with Penguin that I'm late on, for example. So I'm meant to be writing 2 books now. I'm going to take 20 days in the jungle after this and go write
What are they on?
one of them. One of them is about business. I think I'm going to write the next one about either sex or love. I'm not sure. Okay, sex it is. But I need to go on a journey to answer loads of questions there. And when you're time poor, communication can be rushed. And when communication is often on digital platforms, it can be misunderstood. So whether it's with my partner, whether it's in my businesses, communication is probably the number one thing that I want to improve at. And then I want to get even better at delegating. So I'm working hard on that.
Okay. You've got a couple of businesses that are kind of at the forefront at the moment for you, Flight Story and Third Web. So, because we're running out of time, what are you seeing as the biggest opportunities right now? I think still there are people who are struggling with the idea of Third Web. Where are the opportunities for entrepreneurs there? What are you seeing as the future right now?
I think content is always just a massive opportunity, one that's here to stay. And that's what people call personal branding. It's the first, over the last 10 years is really the first time where you can control your own narrative as a person. And as I said to you earlier about Social Chain, I built a business that ended up generating about $700 million a year. And I did it by speaking on stage and the content that created. So every single day of my life, even today, I'll be wearing a microphone, and this will become 10 clips that go across all of my social media channels. Understanding content and understanding how to build an audience is just a massive thing in this day and age. It's a skill that it's really worth investing in, and it will transform your business. Year 1 of Social Chain, 70% of our business came from personal branding, and that's why I built a team in my company. I didn't have a sales team, but I had 5 people that worked in my personal brand team. Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a good friend of mine, has almost 30 people that work in his personal brand team. Again, he won't have a sales team. And then the other one is, I think what's going on with the blockchain at the moment is a huge opportunity for everybody. I was successful in social media because we were early. I see it like a surfboard. I see it like waves. A wave is coming into shore, which is like a tectonic shift in technology. With that comes huge opportunity. Now, when the wave comes into shore, you get tons of skepticism. Skepticism I saw when I started Social Chain. MTV laughed me out of the room at the prospect of starting a social media page. They were scared that people could share what they say and comment on it. That was 10 years ago, maybe just over 10 years ago. And when the wave is coming into shore, you pick your surfboard, which is your positioning your team, and you ride it into shore. One of the waves that's coming into shore at the moment is Web3. And you've seen the skepticism. You've seen all the same stuff that we saw with Web 1, the internet, with Web 2, social media. You're seeing everybody calling it a scam. You're seeing the boom and the bust cycles, the fear, the uncertainty, the doubt. But underneath there, you have a technology that makes much of our lives, stands to make much of our lives better, faster, cheaper, easier. And that's what I focused on with social media. I was so clear that it was a better form of marketing than posters, newspapers, flyers, and all of those things. And you just couldn't tell me otherwise. Nobody could tell me otherwise. And we built a surfboard and we rode that wave into shore. And the same thing's happening with Web3. Underneath there, the blockchain and what that enables in terms of verification and transparency across multiple industries, whether it's verifying wine in the supply chain, or whether it's verifying art or whatever it is going to make so much of our lives better, faster, cheaper. And for regions like this, who are looking to capitalize on the next big technological boom, I would be creating an ecosystem and an environment that is friendly for the builders of Web3. And if I was a young person now, and I was trying to find that next wave to ride into shore, where my skills in the future will return greater than any other skills, I would be positioning myself in Web3. Because it's inevitable, and nobody can tell me otherwise. Just like they couldn't with social media.
Just quickly, in terms of, content, because content is your thing. Content that people resonate with and really, because we struggle with that sometimes,
So the most important thing for me to preface this with is every platform that you produce content on requires different, it's like a stage. It has a different audience, but it also requires a different delivery. Some basic principles for all content. Everything should be as simple as possible, but not simpler. Always think about that. It shouldn't be 1 second longer than it needs to be. And it shouldn't be 1 second shorter than it needs to be. Shorter the better. Everything should be as simple as possible, but not simpler. And then another general point for all platforms is that first 5 seconds is your most important. Same with my podcast. Same with every channel, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever. People decide whether they're going to stick around or they're going to swipe or scroll or whatever in that first 3 to 5 seconds. So I say a lot to my team, we call it the thumb stop. How do we stop their thumb? I can give you a gazillion of these little principles for every social platform. You name the platform, I'll give you 10 million principles. But those are some basic ones. And then what I said about vulnerability. Don't say things that are wallpaper. Don't say things people have heard before. Try and cut through. Use emotion. Lean on the side of controversy if you have the guts.
If you have the guts.
Yeah.
Okay, final question before we let you go. Messi or Mbappe?
Messi.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking the incredible Steven Bartlett.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.